Welcome into Rounding the Bases Live, presented by Enterprise Bank and Trust. Hashtag no stopping you. Good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday. My name is Joel Goldberg, and thanks for joining episode number 103. Hope your week is going well, and I'm coming to you live, as always, from the KCAV studios, Kansas City Audio Visual. I say always. I made the move made the big move from the walk-in closet to the spare bedroom. So I feel like I've upgraded in terms of studios, and KCAV helped me with that. They can do much more than that. So check them out, kcav.com, and they can take care of all of your audio visual needs. A really cool guest today that I've been excited to talk to for, I think it's been about a few weeks or so, 3-4 weeks maybe, since we talked on the phone. I'm a storyteller. I am interviewing a storyteller today, and a woman with truly a really, really amazing journey, and one that is being chronicled in a brand new book called Trust Your Animal Instincts. And so really, really cool story today. I am happy to be joined by Tabitha Scott. And Tabitha, first and foremost, how are you today?
I'm well, ready to go. How about you, Joel?
I'm doing great. And I know that when you and I spoke a few weeks in advance of this interview, I was so excited because your story really, really is amazing. And I don't know that dabbled is the right word, but you've been involved in so many different aspects of life, and it truly has been a journey. So let's start with this. Tell me about the new book. That's a great way to start. Trust Your Animal Instincts, which uh, recently released just the other day on Amazon, doing very well. Tell me about the book.
Well, the book is a true story about a journey that I went through, and I think almost every business person can relate to work-life balance. And it was dealing with the things that we face, balancing between our home life and our work life and the pressures therein. And I think it's been so successful so far because everybody's feeling off balance right now. We're kind of swimming in this sea of negative vibes, of uncertainty and fear and frustration. And what happens with us is that brings our own positivity down. And to get that back up, which is what I talk about in the book, we need to really learn to identify and tune out the negativity, and then find those things that either we are really good at or that we love doing and make us feel a little bit better, and do more of them. It sounds simple, but energetically, that's how it works. That's how you raise your vibes back up, like the song Good Vibrations, to be positive again.
Well, there's so much negativity out there at this point. And I think, in general, our minds can often go to the negative. That's what your brain can so often do to you. It takes a lot of work to push that aside. But now I think the comment that I hear more than anyone is something along the lines of, that is so 2020, which is true. We've never had a year like this. None of us have ever had a year like this in our lives. It's been a terrible year. I just can't live that way personally. I want to sit there and say, okay, what can we do in 2020 amidst what are tough times? But there really has never been a time like this before. So I think what you have written is completely relevant to this moment. How often are you hearing and seeing those struggles in all walks of life?
I'm seeing it all the time now. And I think people are really reaching out because they don't understand what's happening energetically. Let me explain that a little bit. What's happening, especially let's talk about the pandemic, for example. We can see and understand a physical attack. If someone's running at you with a baseball bat or a club, you can see that visibly. You can't see what's happening to us energetically. You can't see that negativity pulling you off balance and making you feel that way, but you can feel it. And so it's really important to pay attention to how you're feeling. And as an executive for the last 20 years, feelings are not something that we are really comfortable in the past talking about and sharing. And so I think one benefit of the things that have transpired this year is that it's put us back in touch with what makes us happy. How do we feel about that? And a good deal of my book is about I thought you had to be logical. I worked with renewable energy. I worked with a lot of engineers. I worked with technicians, universities, technology, innovation. And so everything touchy feely or squishy, it wasn't taken seriously in my view. Now I really understand through that training in both electrical physics and how electricity works, as well as human biofield work and studies and certifications. It's all the same. It's just energy. And so focusing on the things that bring your vibrations up and tuning out of the things that bring you down, it's important. And you see that all across the sports world. Like when a batter gets in the box, if he's thinking about all the things that can go wrong with that pitch, where it might end up versus what's in his wheelhouse, then he's going to miss it. He's going to strike out. Instead, he knows what he's really good at, where he can hit that home run, and then he gets real consistent with it. And the more consistent he is, the more positive his results.
So true. It's the reason why I love to speak about baseball, not because I'm in it as a broadcaster, but because there is more failure that athletes have to deal with than any sport. I mean, it's the sport. We don't need to get too into this, but if you're successful 30% of the time, you're considered one of the best at it. And so that takes dealing with a lot of failure. And by the way, not that all those guys have it all figured out either. A lot of them struggle with exactly what you're saying, and it's a battle every single day. So that's something that obviously we deal with. I want to backtrack and go through your story. I, in the simplest form, like in one of those little one-line deals, it would be. You can correct me if I'm wrong here. Uh, Girl grows up in rural America, moves on to the corporate world, finds herself in the jungle, and comes out on the other side. I know that's about the one sentence version. It's much more than that. But tell me about your background growing up and then how you ended up on this just wild journey.
Yeah, so my background growing up was in small town Kentucky on a farm. And I grew up with one of those coach dads. I played basketball and ran track. And so I really valued the competition, the teamwork, the responsibility that being in competition and being in sports teaches you. So I learned that from a very early age. And we also had lots of animals. I had 4 horses, 3 chickens, which I taught to shake hands, by the way, a duck that walked sideways, a couple dogs, 2 cats, and an older sister who was much better behaved than I was. And it was just a great time growing up in Kentucky. Now, that's a basketball state,
Hmm.
and Kansas is as well. But you understand, a lot of my background was in basketball. So I had this firm foundation of if you wanted something, just work really hard for it. And if you wanted a car, then mow the lawns, and make money for it. If you want to go to college, then work as an operator overnight at GTE and, pay for it. So that helped me and served me well becoming an executive. I was CEO by the age of 30 of a military payments company. And then from there went on to be senior vice president of 2 global organizations dealing with sustainability and innovation. And so that drive that I learned as a kid working on a farm and planting our own gardens and taking care of the animals was really important. But that suck it up attitude, I was on a call the other day with Chase Kaufman, and we were talking about how that perfectionism, that push yourself beyond the limits that you learn in sports sometimes doesn't serve you well emotionally. And in times like we're facing with the pandemic right now, because our tendency is, well, let's just suck it up for another day versus, wow, I'm feeling off and I need to take care of that. And so that was the pinnacle of my business career. And then going into the jungle was where I learned the lessons of, listening and reflecting and considering are just as powerful, if not more powerful, than driving, succeeding, competing.
All right, lot to unpack there. Chase Kaufman, by the way, for those that don't know, many certainly in this neck of the woods would. He's a finance guy now, but he played in the NFL, a tight end, and uh, big time football star in the Kansas City area, and then University of Missouri. And so, yeah, really good guy. And
Great guy.
um, he understands it. Look, when you've competed at that level, this as a former athlete. When you've competed at that level, you're doing something that 99% of the world will never do. So not only do you have to have the talent, you have to have that it factor. That's something else. And again, I mentioned it before. Not everybody figures it out. So okay, you're living in the corporate world. You're a CEO at a young age. You have the work ethic. You have everything that's needed, and then, and I'm fast forwarding here, you find yourself, not accidentally, you find yourself in the jungle. How did that come about?
That came about after a very long series of things, both in professional life and in personal life, that led to burnout. And I think one of the reasons that the book is at the top of the new release list right now for work-life balance in business is because we all are facing that struggle. At the time, I had two children, each of which had very special challenges. One of them got narcolepsy at the age of 16,
Mm.
and he had always wanted to be a pilot, started taking pilot flight lessons at age 14. And it kind of changed his life in a dramatic way to the point where he couldn't even finish his high school. He had to do that from home. And so facing that, and the other son who had a rare knee disorder and ended up going from competitive soccer travel team goalie to sitting in his wheelchair watching the other kids play,
Wow.
and feeling like you couldn't tell anyone at work about it, feeling like you needed to keep that at home because as a female, you don't want to show up as too emotional. You don't want to show up as not as professional as the guys. And it was something that in our culture at the time wasn't really something you would want to share. And then eventually ended up having my own cancer scare. I worked in the renewable energy sector, and in the United States, in a lot of places, renewable energy, there's a lot of misunderstandings around it and not a lot of support. And so it felt like sort of emotional quicksand with all of these things going on, and yet keeping up that competitive, suck it up face of you just have to keep up that face and that professionalism and show up behind the podium and do a great job.
Have we gotten better with that as a culture or no?
We have definitely gotten better. I think there's a lot more sensitivity now. I think the pandemic has really woken a lot of people up to our families. And I don't know, my hat goes off to you parents that have children at home now, and you're balancing being a teacher, being, a professional, doing your day job. I don't know how they do it. My kids are grown and gone, and hats off to all of you.
Well, I'm not that far off. I'm not sure if we're in the better or the worse stage because I've got I've got teenagers, so we don't really have to entertain them. The challenge is keeping them contained. And I mean, from a mental health standpoint, though, it's like, the 8-year-old isn't going to go hop in the car or isn't going to demand to go hang out with their friends, but you got to keep them occupied all day. The
Yeah.
older ones, they may go and play video games or get on the social media stuff and on and on and on, right? TikTok and all that stuff. But you got to contain them. So look, everybody's dealing with challenges, and whether you've got kids in the house or not. So I want to talk more about this um, this trip. I don't even know if that's the right way to put it, to the jungle. So it's Costa Rica, right?
It's Costa Rica.
And so when did this take place? How long? And what were you doing while you were there?
This took place in 2017, and my friend Randy Stacy, who, sorry to say, is involved with the Cincinnati Reds
That's okay.
every now and then. But he had a friend with a place in Costa Rica, so sight unseen, and I did not realize it would be hours from paved roads. And, it wasn't what I had in mind when I heard it would be sort of near a beach. Um, it was very remote, no cell service, no TV, no communications without going to the closest little village. And so I spent almost 3 months in the jungle there, on the trails in the sun, figuring out um, what was next for me and how I could use my talents to really help others in this new phase of my life.
So soul searching, right? I mean, this wasn't really a trip to the beach. Maybe it was supposed to be a little bit of one, but suddenly you find yourself living in a totally different world, and one that it sounds like was almost completely unplugged. What and I don't know that it was total isolation, but at a time right now where so many of us are dealing with isolation at different levels, I think all of us would like to just get away too. And so you had that ability to do that. What were those 3 months like for you?
Those 3 months were very interesting. As I mentioned earlier, tuning into the things that make you feel positive or realizing the things that you connect and resonate with. Growing up with animals, I always connected with animals. And so, Oprah Winfrey, and Elon Musk, and Branson, they all attribute their success to intuition. And we're all born with intuition, but in order to be able to hear it, some people literally hear it, some people feel it. For me, animals showed up. I would see lots of snakes for a while until I figured out what that meant. I saw up to 7 scorpions in 48 hours in Costa Rica until I figured out what that meant. And an owl would wake me up every night for a period of time. So those are the stories and the lessons that I learned, and I'm happy to share some of those with you.
Well, I want to hear more about that because, well, I mean, first off, I'm just cringing at the thought of the scorpions and the snakes. How'd you do with that?
I was a little frightened at first, which would be normal, but my parents were school teachers, and my mother always taught us, there's a special purpose for every person. There is a special purpose for every creature. So love them all, be interested in them all, and, there is a purpose. And it all started with the snakes just before I went to Costa Rica. And my friends thought, they didn't know what to think. We were all Googling, what's the meaning of seeing a lot of snakes? And we finally figured out, one day it just hit me as I was riding my bike through the countryside and pretty exasperated with not knowing what it meant after a period of months. And it was shed your skin. And that was a really important lesson for two reasons, because first of all, it's getting rid of the negative. It's tuning out of the things that could harm you. They shed their skin because they get parasites in it. And if they don't drop it and leave it behind, it hurts their health. It hurts their growth. They shed their skin, secondly, because they cannot grow into their potential. They can't thrive and expand. It's literally holding them back. And so my answer of, what do I do with this career? I'm now an empty nester. I've faced this cancer challenge. Nobody knows this. What do I do? It was shed your skin. So I quit my job. I gave away most of my things. I put my house on the market and I went to Costa Rica in the jungle for a few months.
Were there moments in this isolation of self-doubt or question, or was it very clear the whole way?
Oh, there were moments. There were lots of moments. And I think we all are sitting in those moments today with the pandemic and with the uncertainty. And what I can say is the answers are there, but finding your own way to tap into them. What was so challenging for me is I would read about listening to intuition or finding the answers, and it was always a cross-legged pose and being still and listening. And people that are wired like me, you can't do that. I'm not going to say you can't, but it was extremely difficult for me. And what I learned in the jungle was everybody can tap in, but you have to find your way. For me, it might be hiking, watching basketball. For you, it might be golf and watching baseball. But whatever those high vibe activities are, that's how you get a little closer to hearing the messages that you need to hear and a little closer. Another interesting thing that I read recently is that a technology break. So you say, we've been isolated, but I bet we haven't been isolated from technology. And so literally a half day or a whole day fast from technology is a way that science shows your brain can regenerate and start to feel better.
It's a really good idea, and I'm that classic guy that if I go on vacation with my family and we're at the beach, I still can't unplug, right? And it's not even always that I'm working; it's just I'm consuming, and it's a great lesson. It feels good to put all that stuff aside. Everybody always talks about the first thing you do when you wake up. Should you meditate? Should you reflect? All this stuff, and I try that sometimes, and it is good. But I'm not always wired that way, and so I'm consuming, I'm researching, I'm doing all of that stuff. And so many of us, it's just a really interesting point, because so many of us in isolation have turned to more of that
Yeah.
to get that fix. And I'm the person that's not going to sit very still when I read. I'm going to read a couple pages and then my mind goes elsewhere. I'm
Exactly.
wired like that. And so as long as you have your basketball, I guess that's all that matters, right?
And I think you have to acknowledge that, Joel. What I see happening, because we're made of energy, people try to fight back. And it's like the third law of motion, right? You remember those balls that used to crash into
Hmm.
each other in physics class? It's if you try to say, I'm not going to listen to that little voice that is frustrated right now, then you're doing this and you're not solving or moving anything forward. You have to acknowledge, I'm feeling down, or I can't sit still long enough to meditate, and then go do something else. Don't stress yourself out about it. For me, I had to, I was kind of forced into this isolation because I assumed I would have self-service, and I assumed I would be able to search for a new job and do all of those things, communicate. But what it did is it really served me well, because I was able to tune into, if I get really tired from hiking, if I'm out in nature, if I'm running or doing yoga that's more intense yoga, for me, that's what works. And I learned I could sit cross-legged all day and not connect as much as whenever I'm really tired.
So the moment that you realized there was no cell service, which had to have been very quickly, what was the reaction in your head?
Oh my goodness, what am I going to do? And a bit of fear, because the place where I stayed, it was so rural that there was no mailbox, there was no street address. So there was no map even. There was one hand-drawn map at a local bicycle shop that I was able to obtain. But it was pretty rural and a little scary. But you know what? I was at a point of burnout in my life where I just didn't really care. And being raised outdoors, where mom would have to turn on the front porch light that said, hey, Tab, get back inside for the night. I didn't mind being out in a remote place, but from a safety perspective, it was challenging at times.
Unbelievable. And so you adjusted though, right? I mean, we as human beings adjust if we're forced to do so. I mean, I suppose you had a choice, but I don't think you were going to take the easy way out from the little that I know about you. But what was the adjustment like? How long did it take you to really get used to this?
It took a few weeks, and finally getting a car instead of a bicycle was a really good idea, because as I said, it was dirt roads and the potholes there are the size of bathtubs. We complain about ours here, but trying to ride a leisure bicycle, which I picked up when I got there. So imagine me on a bright blue 1940s bicycle cruising around these potholes, and there are feral dogs, wild dogs that would come out the road and try to chase you. So it took about a week or two until I got a car and could get around a little bit better. But I think the only time that I really thought about I might actually go home was when I saw that many scorpions. Everybody kept saying, you might see a scorpion while you're here, so just remember to put lime juice on it if you get stung, but you probably won't see one during those months. And at first, I was feeling like I need to treat these little critters with respect. So I would capture them. And I was horrified. I mean, we don't have them in Kentucky. And I would gently take them outside or scoot them out and put them on what I dubbed Scorpion Hill, and became quite the scorpion wrangler. And by the time the seventh one came, I was just so frustrated. I grabbed this giant rock and just smushed him. And then, of course, felt guiltier than a Baptist in a liquor store. But, but I learned a really important lesson from those scorpions. I was like, okay, what is this message trying to teach me? They have a hard shell, and I was trying to think like the snake. What's it trying to say? And I realized that I had put a really hard shell around myself, a hard barrier around myself all of those years. And I learned the message was put up a shield instead. A shield is something warriors take to battle, put it away, and they use it when they need to. And if you build a barrier, a hard shell around yourself, or even around your emotions and your heart, I couldn't even, before I went to Costa Rica, I can't even tell you the last time I had cried, for example, because as a kid, growing up, you don't do that. You do it better and harder and faster. There isn't any such thing as mistakes. It's just stupid decisions. And so realizing to let go of that, to put that barrier down. And as soon as that epiphany came to me, I didn't see another scorpion. I took a risk at love again.
So all of this chronicled in the book, and you just go on to Amazon or wherever you want to buy your books. You can search Tabitha Scott, or you can search Trust Your Animal Instincts, and so many lessons learned. I mean, it sounds to me like you're a very introspective person to begin with. So you didn't just go there stumbling upon these lessons. I know you were looking for these lessons. How did you come out on the other side?
On the other side, I came out a much better person. The things that made me a very successful executive, the drive, the competition, the definition of success, feeling like once I get there, I'll slow down. Once I get this achievement done, I'll, step back a bit. And I realized that there is invented by us. Where we're going is invented by us in every moment. We have the choice how to react to things. Everything in our lives that we put all of this pressure on ourselves, I call it the should monster. It occurred to me, we have all of these shoulds. You should act a certain way. You should follow the traditions you were raised with. You should be skinny. You should look like the people on television. And then on the other hand, you should be a hard driver. You should not show emotion. You should succeed. And so our societies give us a lot of shoulds, and we end up shoulding all over ourselves if we're not careful. And so detaching that and calling it the should monster was a big epiphany for me. And also really focusing on how do I tune into that inner owl, that inner intuition, because coming from both the electrical renewable energy background and having professional certifications there, as well as human biofield certifications and looking into energetic healing, ancient and modern physicist types of healing, I knew there had to be something there. I knew that there had to be a connection. And the more I studied quantum physics and the more I was in the jungle, it hit me, we focus on our differences. We're grown into different families and cultures. We look different. We talk different. We have different definitions of success. And what I learned was all of those things are outward focused, and the power, the reconnection came to me when I realized it's not about looking outward. It's about looking inward. And when you look inward, we are all made of the exact same energy. Every plant, every animal, every human being. And I think with the coronavirus pandemic, that's what we need to be thinking about. Is it's not about your ethnicity, your background, your demographics. It's, man, we are all the same. And love is way, way, way more powerful than hate, because we all have those same roots.
I love that too. Now just go tell the politicians and we'll be okay, and we can move on with the world. That's part of what makes it so difficult, and all these differences that are constantly highlighted every single day. And I've said this to many people. You could put someone that has completely different beliefs next to me in my neighborhood, and I'm going to do what I can to try to find that common bond, because we do have more than we think. I'd rather not have that neighbor that has that many differences if we're going to make it easier. But you got to make it work. You do. You have to make it work in the workplace. You have to make it work within your family. I mean, those are the challenges that we all have. And as you're saying what you're saying too, it makes me think, and this has been on my mind a lot lately, but here in Kansas City, we have a new manager this year, first time in 10 or so years, and he's gone against the grain on a lot of things. And he's basically said, look, just because that's the way it's supposed to be, because that we've determined that that's the way we do things, he said, I'm not going to do anything unless there's a why.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, you could hear in his voice and see in his words so much that comes out of business books,
Mm-hmm.
from a baseball standpoint, because in the end, it's still all about people and
Right.
managing people. So where are you at nowadays, beyond physical location? Because I know that you're involved in a lot beyond just the book.
Right. I actually support strategy at Tractor Supply Company, which has been doing pretty well this year. And I lead their technology strategy. So it is a wonderful company that really supports our values, and they support their team members. They've been very, very caring throughout the pandemic, both to the people in the field at the retail stores and the headquarters here near the Nashville area. So I couldn't be more blessed and thankful to work for an employer that that cares about things like that, and that cares about sustainability and innovation, the things that I've spent my career doing.
Renewable energy. I know those are two of your favorite words, right? Why is renewable energy? I mean, beyond the obvious of why it should be important to everyone, why is it so important to you?
It's important to me because one of my main mentors, Dana Bowers, back in the day when I was doing electronic payments, she said, figure out what you love to do, Tab, and then figure out how to get paid for it. And for me, renewable energy was a way that I could help with things that affected our health and our sustainability, not from just the altruistic perspective, but from an economic perspective. Renewables grew at 5 times the rate of the regular stock index, so it was a great investment. We did the world's largest solar array while I was working with the company in the last decade here. And so it was accelerating something that helped families save money. It helped our health with asthma, cancer, and diabetes type 2 now being tied to particulates in the air. It's important that we think about it. And that shift after the jungle has been focused on renewable energy, not of solar arrays, but rather of our own renewable energy, and letting people know, hey, you were born with it. You were born with this source of renewable energy inside, and you can still tap into it. Just figure out where your joy comes from and do more of it.
Last question then, where do you want to see yourself in 10 years? Because you strike me as a woman that is constantly evolving. We all are, but very driven. And here you were extremely successful in the corporate world, and you got out of that, and you're still making it happen. I mean, I just sense that you're going to be someone that's making a difference whatever direction you go. So where is your direction? Or maybe you don't even know. What do you think 10 years down the road?
Joel, I kind of take it in little life games. I try not to stress myself out with too long-term, long-term commitments. That's scary. But the short-term life game is to help as many people as possible realize that they have joy and energy and intuition they can tap into at any time without agenda. You don't have to do something fancy. You don't have to pay a lot of money. I just want to, from my heart to theirs, say that you're not alone. You can reconnect, and that they're loved. And beyond that, I've got all sorts of ideas popping up. Now that I own a publishing company, I'd love to help other people get positive messages out into the world, because I think a lot of focus is on getting the negative out and fear factor out there. So maybe I can use some of the things that I'm learning with this book to get positive messages out into the world that actually lift each other up.
So you've got CEO of Powering Potential. We've got the Tractor Supply Company and the new book. So there's a lot going on, and I'm sure I'm not even hitting all of it. But for everyone that wants to check out Tabitha, powering-potential.com, and the book on Amazon, just search Trust Your Animal Instincts, or you can search Tabitha Scott, and you'll find that. And you can get the hard copy, you can get the Kindle, all the stuff that we do nowadays. And did you get a chance to read a lot while you were in Costa Rica? I would imagine that there was plenty of time to read, although again, without cell service, you needed to have downloaded everything or brought all those copies with you.
I did take a lot of books with me, and I actually spent a lot of time writing. So the book is broken into 3 sections. The first is my background, what led up to burnout. The middle section is about my journey in Costa Rica and finding love again, and adventure. And it's interesting because it's trending now as a new release for Costa Rican travel. So I didn't see that one coming. but it was definitely an adventure. And then the third section is kind of the Tab's view of physics and how all things energy are interwoven and how we all come together and how we could be Baptists or Methodists or Buddhists, but we're all just energists at our core.
I love that. So true. Congratulations on the book. Now being a travel writer, apparently, so too. Hey, you never know. Take all of it, every bit that you can get. You know that. So again, you can search Amazon, search "Trust Your Animal Instincts," and pick up a copy of that. Congrats on everything, on the journey of coming out the way you did on the other side, all those lessons learned, and the ability now to share those with so many other people. This has been a lot of fun. Tabitha, thanks so much for spending the time, and best of luck with the book.
Thanks, Joel. I really appreciate it. Take care, everyone.
All right. So that is Tabitha Scott. Really amazing story. I hope you enjoyed that. Share it with your friends. Encourage everybody to get that book, um, and just share these links with everybody and get the message out. Hope that you'll do that every single day. Back with another episode tomorrow. As always, want to thank my friends at KCAV for helping me out with this studio. Any office, the biggest of size, they have all the bells and whistles and all the fun stuff that people see in offices, especially now as offices are being redesigned amidst this pandemic and going forward. So I hope you look at them, Kansas City Audio Visual, kcav.com, and couldn't do this without the support of my partners at Enterprise Bank and Trust, hashtag no stopping you. Thanks for watching, everybody. My name is Joel Goldberg. Have a great rest of your day, and see you tomorrow on Rounding the Bases Live.